We often think of trauma as something that happens in the mind, like a bad memory that we just can't shake. But what if it's also stored in our muscles, our nerves, our very bodies? That's the huge, game-changing idea at the core of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's landmark book, The Body Keeps the Score. So today, we're going to dive into how trauma literally reshapes our brain and body, and maybe most importantly, how we can actually begin to heal. This quote, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? Trauma isn't just a bad event. It's an experience so overwhelming that our systems just can't compute it. As van der Kolk explains, people who've gone through it become so upset when they even think about it that their instinct is to just shove it away. It takes a tremendous amount of energy just to keep going, to live your life while carrying that terror inside.
So first, let's really look at the problem itself, because trauma isn't just a thing that happened in the past. It's the confusing, painful, and often invisible symptoms that can end up defining a person's entire life for years, sometimes even decades after the fact. The book introduces us to a man named Tom. And on the outside, you'd think he had it all. He came home from Vietnam, put himself through college, became a really successful lawyer, married his high school sweetheart, and had 2 sons. A thriving practice, a perfect family, but on the inside, he felt completely abnormal. He said he felt totally, utterly dead inside.
And Tom's symptoms were just devastatingly specific. He was emotionally numb, totally unable to feel any real love or affection for his wife and kids. The smallest frustrations would trigger these huge, out-of-control rages. Even just the sound of his own children playing would make him so agitated that he'd have to storm out of the house. The only things that gave him any relief were drinking himself into oblivion or riding his motorcycle at terrifyingly high speeds. You see, this wasn't just in his head, it was a full-body experience.
Okay, so what in the world is going on here? What's the science behind this? Why do these reactions happen? Why does the past refuse to stay in the past? Well, it all comes down to how trauma literally rewires the brain's own alarm system.
This is the question that frustrates so many people, right? Both survivors and the people who love them. And the answer is deep inside the brain. See, long after a traumatic event is over, the part of our brain that's dedicated to survival can be set off by the tiniest hint of danger, unleashing this massive flood of stress hormones and creating those intense, overwhelming reactions that feel like they come from nowhere.
Think of it like this. The amygdala is your brain's smoke detector. Its job is to scream fire when it senses danger, to keep you safe. But for survivors of trauma, that smoke detector becomes hypersensitive. It can get stuck in the on position, constantly sounding the alarm and triggering a full-blown emergency response, even when there's no fire, not even a puff of smoke. To really get this, you have to understand that our brain basically has 2 roads for processing information. There's the high road. That's the slow, scenic route that goes to our rational, thinking brain. It's analytical. But then there's the low road. That's a lightning-fast superhighway straight to the amygdala, our emotional brain. In a moment of threat, the low road takes over. And for trauma survivors, this emotional brain hijacks the entire system, shutting down the rational brain's ability to step in and say, hey, wait a minute, this is just a memory, you're safe now. So here is the crucial point. When that alarm system goes off, our ability to use language, to make sense of things, it often just shuts down. As van der Kolk says, trauma is pre-verbal. People in these extreme states don't form coherent stories. They might scream, or they might freeze completely. The experience isn't stored as a neat narrative. It's stored in fragments, in sensations, in images.
And this is exactly where the body comes in. If trauma isn't stored in words, where does it live? Well, it lives in our physical sensations. It gets lodged in our posture, our gut feelings, and even in our chronic health conditions.
This leads to a really fascinating condition called alexithymia. It's a mouthful, I know, but it literally means no words for feelings. Many survivors just can't describe what they're feeling because they don't register it emotionally. So instead of saying I feel sad or I feel scared, they might complain about muscle pain or stomach problems or some other physical symptom. Their body is speaking the language their mind can't.
The long-term effects of this are just devastating. When your body is constantly stuck in survival mode, always mobilized to fight off enemies that aren't there, it takes a massive toll. This explains why we see such high rates of chronic pain, fibromyalgia, migraines, and even autoimmune diseases among people with a history of trauma. The body is keeping the score.
But here's the thing. This book is ultimately a message of profound hope. It doesn't just diagnose this incredibly difficult problem, it shows us the way out. Van der Kolk outlines 3 fundamental paths to healing that address the whole person, mind, brain, and body.
First, though, we have to kind of reframe the goal. Recovery isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about being able to live with the memory without it hijacking your brain and body every 5 minutes. It's about learning to feel safe in your own skin, right here, in the present moment.
So Kolk presents 3 key avenues. The first is top-down. That's what we typically think of as therapy: talking, processing memories, making rational sense of them. The second is medication, which can sometimes help calm that overactive alarm system enough for the other work to begin. But the third one, and this is maybe the most revolutionary insight, is the bottom-up approach. This is where we engage the body directly. Because if trauma is stored physically, healing has to be physical too. Practices like yoga, breathwork, or even martial arts can give the body new experiences that directly contradict those old feelings of helplessness and terror. It's about teaching the body on a deep, visceral level that it can be safe, strong, and in control again.
And that is the ultimate goal, isn't it? Not just to manage symptoms, but to give people back their lives, to help them reconnect with themselves, with others, and to feel fully, vibrantly alive in the here and now.
So this leaves us with a really critical question to think about. If we accept this idea that the body keeps the score, it changes everything. It challenges us to think beyond just talk therapy. It makes us ask, how can our schools, our healthcare systems, and our communities create more opportunities for healing that honor this deep, undeniable connection between our minds, our brains, and our bodies?